So you've been playing the Battle Pass and now you've accumulated enough tokens to maybe even go and get the TS60 or one of the 28 token tanks. But which one should you get? In this video I'm going to be going through absolutely every single one of these tanks and giving you my opinion on which one you should get, shortlist and avoid in this game. First up is the AE Phase 1. Now this is a fan favourite and one of the oldest tanks that you could possibly get from the Battle Pass. And it's a fan favourite with good reason. This tank is very, very good. And considering there is only 12 tokens, it is extremely good value. And the token amount is something that you're going to have to put into the value of the tank. Because if a Phase 1, for example, is 12 tokens, and then one tank is 28 tokens, but pretty much the same thing, then that is a big difference and quite bad value for your tokens if you went for the higher option. The Phase 1 has a 120mm caliber gun, it has 400 alpha, 258 standard pen and 340 heat as the premium round. You don't get anything exceptional about this vehicle, maybe apart from that 340 heat, which is very, very nice, but the rest of the vehicle is just a good all-round experience. You have good enough armor, good enough DPM, good enough accuracy and good enough mobility. And for 12 tokens, you really can't go wrong if you don't already have this vehicle. And obviously, quite a few people are going to have this because it has been in the Battle Pass from the very beginning. And even before then, it was through Frontline you could get this vehicle. So that means that the verdict for this tank is that you should go ahead and get it straight away if you have enough tokens. Because it is by far probably the best all-round tank as a heavy tank that you can get out of these tokens. Next up is the Kunze Panzer. Now this is a little bit of a weird vehicle. You do get a decent gun. Sort of. You have a 105mm caliber gun with 390 alpha, 268 standard pen and 300 heat as the premium round. Now the standard round is APCR and it does go pretty fast. So they are really, really good standard rounds. However, this tank gets a siege mode built in which you can activate using the X key. And when you do, the DPM drops off a cliff, the accuracy gets better, and you get slower. And to be honest with you, the siege mode is one of the biggest gimmicks about this tank because you should never be entering it in the first place. The tank just becomes so sluggish and not very nice to play when you enter it, and when you're not in it, because the 0.4 base dispersion exists, you're only ever going to get that down to like 0.32 even if you used like IAU and vents. So this tank, the gun is really not that nice and you never really want to be in siege mode because your DPM is then just completely non-existent. It does go fast at 65, obviously not in siege mode, but it goes fast enough to get around the map. But I really wish that this was just a normal tank rather than having this gimmicky siege mode, which makes it just not worthwhile to pick up at all. You do get really, really nice camo. However, it doesn't really mean much when, again, you have a gimmicky gun. So I would not recommend anybody to get this and you should avoid spending your tokens on this tank. The Object 777-2. Now this has a 122mm gun with 440 alpha, 258 standard rounds and 340 heat. Now this gun is fine. It's your typical Soviet heavy gun. It will get through stuff, it will be annoying when it wants to be annoying, and it will hit everything when it wants to hit everything. It is the true RNG gun. The whole tank is honestly just a beauty to play. It really is. You can side scrape well in it, you can angle your armor, and you can go hold down when you need to. However, there is one thing that you need to watch out for, and that is you are very, and I mean very low profile, and you don't actually have that much gun depression, only -6, which means that when you are trying to get down and hold down behind something, you sometimes just don't have the gun depression to do it, and it can be very annoying in that scenario. Apart from that, the rest of the tank is pretty nice. You have more than enough top speed at 40, good enough view range for a heavy tank at least, and really, really nice hit points as well. Overall, I would say that you should definitely shortlist this vehicle and then make your decision up at the end once you compare it to everything else. The K91 PT. There's only one thing that you really need to know about this tank, and that is if you're going to be spamming APCR with it, you should shortlist this tank. If you are not planning on spamming APCR with it, avoid this tank. And the reason isn't because it has bad standard rounds. It has 258 standard, 390 alpha from its 122mm gun. It's good, but the shell velocity is awful. The standard rounds on this tank are AP and they only have 860 meters a second. The APCR rounds don't go insanely fast for APCR, but they do go at 1100, meaning that this is much nicer for that mid to longer range engagements, which is what you would be favouring in this vehicle. And also another reason is that it will fly straighter rather than going up and then back down because of how fast the shell velocity is. And at longer ranges, considering you have only 0.38 accuracy, I would definitely rather have the higher APCR shell velocity. Apart from that, the upper superstructure is really strong. But this big lower plate, you can get overexposed way too easy when you think that you'll actually hold down because of just how large this lower plate is. You only have minus 5.5 degrees of gun depression, which means that you will be overexposing this a lot. Another thing to note is that you only get 30 rounds in this tank, which means that if you were to mix and match your shells with AP and APCR, you would end up running out pretty fast. Apart from those shortcomings, the rest of it is okay. It's fast enough, it has insanely good camo, and the gun is derpy but manageable. So as I said, shortlist this if you're going to be spamming gold and it's an okay to sometimes fun tank. It's definitely not an insanely good vehicle. Would I recommend this over, say, a 777? Probably not. But shortlist it and then you can make up your mind along the way. But if you're not going to be spamming gold, then I do not think that you're going to have a very fun time with this vehicle. And I would not bother getting it at all. The Char Futur 4. Now this has a 105mm caliber gun with 390 alpha, 268 standard rounds, 4 shells in the magazine, and 4 seconds interclip reload. This means that you will have, once you reload for 40 seconds, at least that's what it is for base, you will then have 4 shells there, fire once, wait 4 seconds, fire again until all 4 shells have been depleted, and then you have another 40-second reload afterwards. This is another fan favourite from the Battle Pass and also from Frontline if you manage to get it through that. This tank is one of the most fun tanks to play because it is such a good all-rounder. You could scout with it. You could brawl with it if you really wanted to, as long as you do work within that intraclip reload. And you can play mid to longer ranges with it. The gun is reliable, it's accurate, and it has enough gun depression to play on a variety of different ridgelines and use cases. It goes at 60 kilometers an hour with decent power to weight, and it even has decent hit points considering that it is a more low profile and fast medium tank. All in all, this tank can do everything, and to be quite honest with you, if you can't make this tank work, it's more to do with you than it is to do with the tank. Because this tank will give you every opportunity to play however you want, and it is just down to the player to do the rest. So I recommend everybody to pick up this vehicle because you will have fun no matter what your playstyle. No matter if you want to spam full gold, although I wouldn't recommend that because it does only get the 330 heat rounds, which, although yes, they are 330 heat and it is quite good, they are not very good against other things at longer ranges. So in a medium tank, especially if it's an autoloader, I wouldn't recommend spamming the heat, but, you know, whatever you want to do. But those standard rounds are really, really nice. Obviously being APCR, going fast, and having decent standard pen. But everybody should pick this thing up. It is an absolute jewel to have and a joy to play with. The TT-130M is a tank that you should avoid like the plague. It has nothing going for it other than rocket boosters. And once those deplete, you are then slower than the majority of heavy tanks on your team. And I'm even looking at S-Conks and other things like that, even an E100. The rocket booster is a gimmick. The armor is okay. I think that's the best that we can put it as. The gun makes you want to spam full gold because the standard round is only 244 pen. And for a heavy tank at tier 9, that is not enough. You don't really get too much DPM, although it's definitely not awful DPM. And you do get 490 alpha. So it is quite nice in that regard, being hard hitting, but nothing else makes up for that. Like, you get so slow after using your boosters, you go down to 30 kilometers an hour. You then have 1,850 hit points, which is only 100 more than the Char, if we remember. The gun is pretty derpy, it has pretty long aiming time, and you only get -5 degrees of gun depression. And that is probably the biggest killer of all. The fact that when you go to a ridgeline, you just cannot play there. And so many maps in this game revolve around ridgelines. So I would avoid this tank completely. Do not bother spending your tokens on it. It is not worth picking up. The BZ58-2. Now this is a true heavy tank. This can do it all. It is like a phase 1, but Chinese, and also sacrifices some of the pen that the phase 1 has, but gets much more alpha damage. It hits hard and it has good armor. You can side scrape in this thing, you can go hold down to a certain extent in this thing, and you can trade with this thing. You get a 130mm caliber gun, which has 520 alpha, 250 standard pen, which isn't great by any means, but it is still somewhat usable in the majority of situations. But you do also get 303 APCR as premium rounds. Now, this is not fast APCR or anything like that, so don't expecting to be sniping at long ranges, but it is nice that you have over 300 for the premium round, even though there is only APCR, and you will still struggle against some more heavily armored tanks, especially at distance. The gun is okay. That's the best way that I can describe it. It is not super accurate. It is not super derpy. It's just in the middle of the road okay. You go 35 kilometers an hour, which is actually fast enough. That's faster than the TT130M, and you are a big fat heavy tank at this stage rather than something with rocket boosters, so that really does show you just how slow the 130M is. DPM, again, is not insanely good, but it's good enough, and you also get that big hard hitting 520 alpha. So all in all, with the 1,900 hit points as well, this is a very, very good package. This is basically just like a Chinese phase 1, as I said at the start. So what I would do is say shortlist this vehicle, because even though there is probably one of the best heavy tanks out of the lot, it's 20 tokens, which you need to take into consideration, especially when the phase 1 exists if you don't already have that. The Lorraine 50T. Now for some people, this will be an amazing tank. For others, they really won't enjoy it. It does get a very good gun though. You will get a 120mm caliber gun with 400 alpha, 264 standard pen, 308 premium pen, and the premium pen being APCR. You only get 1,750 hit points, which means that you're definitely going to be lacking in that department, and you actually have the same amount of hit points as a Char does, which is just weird. Apart from that though, you do go at 60 kilometers an hour, although you will want to pick the first left-hand field mod if you actually want to maintain that speed, which then means that you probably don't want to be choosing hardening, and you definitely want to have a turbo on it, which means that then your equipment kind of gets picked for you, and it starts to become a little bit annoying in that respect. So if you are someone that enjoys playing with hardening and getting the most out of the hit points, this isn't for you. This is a very fragile heavy tank. It gets no hull armor. The turret armor is actually okay, but the hull armor is useless. You go fast, you get into position, and you use your gun. That is the strength of this vehicle with its -10 degrees of gun depression. If you like that style of play, then this will be probably for you. But if you don't like having no hull armor at all, and that annoys you that you can't side scrape, especially on some maps where you're actually going to have to do that, this tank can be very, very bad. For that reason, I'd say that you should shortlist this. Remember, this is 20 tokens, which is in line with the BZ. So, you know, you're going to be trading blows with each other regarding that. And then you can make up your mind which one would be better for you. So I'd say shortlist it and then keep tabs of it, compare it to everything else. Moving on to the TS60. And now we are entering tanks that cost 28 tokens, which is important because it's going to cost you at least 2 of the Battle Pass seasons to be able to get it. The maximum you can get from one season is 24 tokens if you completed all of it, and purchase the improved pass, meaning that you are still going to have to gain 4 tokens in the next season to get one of these vehicles. So what do you get on the TS60? You get a 120mm caliber gun, 400 alpha, 258 standard rounds, and 320 heat as the premium rounds. So the gun seems pretty good, however, it is incredibly derpy at 0.38 dispersion, and no matter what you do, you cannot get this down. And there's something that's even worse about this tank. Because this is a tank destroyer, not a heavy tank or a medium tank, you cannot put stab on this vehicle. Meaning that the bloom that you get basically has no way of being counteracted by any equipment choice. Yes, IAU would do a little bit, but it's not really going to affect this tank in any way that is going to be measurable. I have used IAU on this tank and it didn't really help it out. What this tank really needs is to be able to have V-stab, and it's just not available to it. So you are constantly going to have quite a big amount of bloom, especially when you're on the move or you turn your tank, and it will get very annoying. It goes at 35 kilometers an hour, which is fine. Again, you play this tank more like a heavy tank than you would a tank destroyer. However, you play it like that, and some of you may say, okay, well, this is a rear mounted tank. That means that you can side scrape. Yes and no. You see, the problem is that if you overmatch or over angle, even a little bit, you will go straight through here with heat. And that's not a good sign, because that means that the side is just not very strong at all. And if we actually go ahead and have a look at the hull armor, you'll see that it is only 80mm thick. So that means that when you go for a little bit too much of an angle, you get penned straight through the side with heat rounds. With AP or APCR, you're going to have to be showing a little bit more of an angle because of the auto ricochet angles that AP and APCR have compared to heat. But this is just not very good for side scraping. You also get a massive weak spot. Well, I say massive. It's not a massive weak spot, but a big enough weak spot at the back here where people will be able to shoot you no matter what they are firing at. The cupola is also a pretty big target, and you can get overmatched on the roof here with anything that is larger than a 120mm caliber gun. The cupola on this tank is also not like a phase 1. This is a very easy to pen cupola, and you will easily get shot in it every single time. Even from people that are below you, you will get shot in this cupola. This is an incredibly easy tank to kill, and it's an incredibly annoying tank to play with. When the gun works, it's great, and you can have funny DPM moments. But those are few and far between, because most of the time, you're just going to be getting penned and shot by people that are way further away, and your gun won't work properly, and you'll just get frustrated with yourself and with the tank. So for that reason, and it's costing 28 tokens for that pleasure, avoid it. The Kunze Panzer 3 Project 7 HK. World's longest name, but what you get is a 105mm caliber gun, 360 alpha, with 268 standard pen and 320 heat for the premium pen. Gun, very good. However, has siege mode, which turns the gun from having good DPM into having better accuracy, but bad DPM. Without going into siege mode, your tank has 0 gun depression. It's awful. It has no capability of really going up or down. You are purely at the mercy of whatever ridgeline you are on. This tank is incredibly frustrating, and it will keep snapping as well whenever you're trying to shoot something if you're not in the siege mode. So the siege mode is 100% necessary if you're trying to actually shoot stuff, especially at longer ranges and whatnot. But at close range, you can maybe get away without going into siege mode. But then at the same time, you're then limiting all of that DPM down because you have to go into the siege mode. You do go fast enough. You do have very, very good camo ratings, but the view range is awful. And the worst thing probably about this tank is that it takes 3 seconds to enter and exit siege mode, which is just feeling like forever when you're in battle. You get no hit points at all, 1,450, and the gun is very derpy without siege mode, but obviously in siege mode it is better. So, in my opinion, this whole tank is just a bit of a gimmick, right? There's nothing that is exceptional about the vehicle. There's nothing that I would say to you, yes, this is amazing. It's well worth it. The whole tank just feels gimmicky. And there's better tanks that have this siege mode capability, such as the UDES, the STRVs, all of these, which actually work better than this thing, that I would just never recommend anybody to get this tank. It costs 28 tokens, remember? And for that, you could get both the Char and the Phase for that price. Doesn't seem worth it. And finally, the Cobra. If you have 28 tokens and you're looking for the most fun tank out of all of these, it's this thing. However, I will warn you, it is going to be exceptionally expensive to play this vehicle. Looking at the base stats, you may look at it and say, that is not good. And I'd agree with you, because this tank is not meant to be played with the standard rounds. It's not meant to be played with the HE rounds. It is meant to be played with pure premium HE with 490 alpha and 210 penetration. It has 4 shells in the magazine, 1.5 seconds between each shell. That means you could dish out 2,000 potential damage in under 5 seconds, and this thing can meet tier 7. I personally love free-shotting a tier 7 heavy tank in under 3 seconds. That's great! This tank is hilarious. It's broken, but hilarious. It goes at 40, it has an insanely good traverse speed as well, which you can, if you max it out, you can almost become like a helicopter and it looks like it's about to take off. That's how fast you can turn in this thing. And it's just fun. You don't get view range, you don't get camo, but what you do get is a lot of fun. And if you have 28 tokens, get this thing. It is very fun indeed. Although your pockets are going to have to be quite deep considering the price of the ammunition. I think it's about 5,000 per shell. So hopefully you enjoyed. I'm trying my best to kind of cut down on any of the excess stuff that you might not want in the videos, such as gameplay. I could have made a game in each one of these, right? And then done a much longer video. But I just thought, you know what? I'll go through each of them. I'll tell you my opinions on them. And then you can make your decision from there. If you do want to watch me live, then you can follow me on Twitch, which a link will be in the description or in the pinned comment. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe. And I'll see you all in the next one.